actually, sleep is one of the most productive things you can do, because if you think about what happens when you sleep, it's not just that your body shuts down and your brain shuts down. In fact, sleep is a relatively active process. Your brain is active during sleep.
Hi, skin friend. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Skin Reel. This week, I am really excited to have Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown joining me. She is a triple board certified sleep medicine physician and pediatric pulmonologist. Dr. Brown is the founder of Restful Sleep MD, where she helps high achieving professionals and their children change their relationship with sleep so that they can move from being drained and exhausted in their families, their careers, their relationships, and life is going to get so much better when you sleep well and you feel good. Dr. Brown not only has her clinical practice, the Restful Sleep Place, she also is a coach, a speaker, and a consultant, as well as a best-selling author. So she has so many pearls, and I'm so glad to have her here. And she is going to be dropping all this knowledge on us on why sleep is so important. Now, if you are anything like me, for decades of my life, I felt like sleep was a waste of time. I felt like I could be doing so many other things and be so much more productive with my time if I could just shave off hours sleeping, which to me, I thought was just wasted lying in bed doing nothing. And what I've come to realize now is how much I need that, how much better I feel when I get consistent, good quality sleep every single night. Not only do I feel better, I am in a better mood. I can think more clearly. I look better and I eat better. Okay. Like if I get no sleep, there is no way I can make good choices in my life and about what I eat. And so this is something now as a mid 40-year-old that is so imperative to me that really sleep is a non-negotiable, that I got to go to bed at 10 o'clock and I wake up at 5 and I feel amazing. And some of the tips for doing this, I learned from Dr. Brown and have been following. And so I can't wait for her to share her sleeping tips with you as well. If you are interested in learning about how you can have better sleep, either for yourself or for your family, and creating healthy sleep habits, you are definitely going to want to check this out. Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to pick your brain all about sleep, because this is something that I used to minimize and think was not important. And now it is one of my favorite things to do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Now, I introduced you earlier, but I would love to hear in your own words who you are and how you became interested in sleep medicine.
Yeah, so I started off in pediatrics, right? I'm a pediatrician. And I, struggled with sleep myself, as most people within the healthcare space, had kids who didn't sleep, as some people within the healthcare space and other spaces, right? And so I was already coming in with my story, and that got me curious about sleep. And then, fast forward, I did a fellowship in pediatric pulmonology, really to take care of kids who had breathing issues. And I noticed there was a pattern right away, which was that their sleeping was impaired. So combining my own history of insomnia and sleep deprivation with, sleep issues that I was encountering within my space, within my clinical space, I went ahead and pursued a sleep fellowship specifically to really understand sleep health and sleep disorders. And I just fell in love with it. And I've really made that the most of my career now. And I'm helping, children, I'm helping their parents. Really passionate about high achieving moms as well. And so now I have a practice, and I'm also speaking on various platforms really on how important it is for people to change their relationship with sleep.
I think that's so key, because at least when I was doing medical training, I would have 24, 36-hour shifts, right? I mean, that is a day or longer, and we're expected to be able to take care of patients and make good decisions on no sleep whatsoever. But it just became ingrained in us, right? In the medical community, right? Like, you don't need sleep. You live at the hospital. You work all the time. And so that really was this mantra that I had, that sleep was for people who were lazy and I didn't need it. And I'd really be like proud of myself for sleeping as little as possible, thinking I was super productive. And then I had kids and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like an intern again. I'm up all night. And that was really draining too. And I feel like as I got older too, it's like, I can't do this anymore. Sleep is so important. And I love that there are people like you out there helping to educate that no, sleep is not a sign of weakness. We actually really need it. And I would love for you to tell us, why do we need sleep? Why is it so important? And couldn't we be doing other things for 8 hours that'd be more productive?
I love how you said that. Like, exhaustion has been considered a badge of honor on sleep deprivation. And now, of course, we have so much science that has emerged that, actually sleep is one of the most productive things you can do. Because if you think about what happens when you sleep, it's not just that your body shuts down and your brain shuts down. In fact, sleep is a relatively active process. Your brain is active during sleep. And we've looked at that on, EEGs, where we're looking at brainwave activities. And the brain is cycling through just different cycles pretty much, and each one of them serving a different function. So starting from just the role of cleansing, the cleansing action that sleep provides. So one thing we know is that when we're awake during the day, we have buildup of deposits and waste products on the surface of our brain. So when we allow ourselves to sleep, actually there are channels that open up that cleanse the brain of those products. Now, if those products accumulate over time, we found that one of the contributors to conditions like Alzheimer's. So I know people are doing all kinds of things, trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's and treatments and medications. Well, actually, sleep is one preventative tool that we can use that can help. And then when we think about just, the restorative function of sleep. So during sleep, you have production of different hormones or regulation of different hormones. So those hormones kind of reach their peak during certain stages of sleep. So something like growth hormone. And growth hormone is not just for you to grow taller like we would see in our kids, but really it helps with our muscle recovery, even in our athletes or anybody that's even trying to live a healthy lifestyle, right? Our immune system gets regulated during sleep, such that we know now that people who don't get enough sleep are more likely to catch even the common cold and other types of illnesses. And then, blood pressure regulation, your sugars are regulated during sleep. And so really every single system in our body is impacted by sleep in one shape or form.
Yeah, I'll just throw in, as a dermatologist, our skin, because people listening are probably thinking about their skin. And I probably don't need to state the obvious, right? Like, how do you look when you wake up in the morning after pulling an all-nighter or having a newborn, right? Like, you have dark circles under your eyes. Your skin is not bright and glowing. So if that's the only thing that gets you to have more sleep, great. I love how you are sharing, like, really every organ system needs this. And I love how you put it that it's productive, because I think so many people think sleep is a waste of time, but it's not. You're actually having so many important things going on. You just don't realize it. So I love how you put that. So of course, the question is, how many hours of sleep do we need a night?
That's a very popular question, but sometimes it's confusing. Some people are like, is it 7? Is it 8? Or is it 9? And the thing about it is, I think there's really no set number. There's just a range. So what we know is that about 7 to 9 hours is ideal. But we have some people who are kind of short sleepers. And then we have some people who may need a little bit more. So I really think it depends. It depends on age. It depends on season in life. It depends on what's going on. Ideally, we aim for 7 to 9. And when people say that, how do I know? Am I a 7 or an 8 or a 9? And so one of the things I recommend is you kind of do your own experiment. So maybe you have a week or something where you don't necessarily need to wake up early, or you don't need to wake up to an alarm clock, and you're not sleep deprived. And you can see around when you naturally tend to fall asleep and when you would naturally wake up without an alarm clock. If you've been sleep deprived, of course, you're going to feel like you're sleeping a lot more. But once that stabilizes out, you're going to end somewhere within that 7 to 9 hour mark. And that really should be what you should aim for every night. And I also think beyond just the quantity is also the quality of sleep, because that's actually as important, if not sometimes more important than just the quantity of sleep.
What do you mean by the quality of sleep, right? I think we all know the number, and I've done that sort of test too. I think I'm a 7, because on the weekends, if I go to bed and not stay up crazy late, I will naturally wake up 7 hours later. So I don't know. That's what I think, at least in this stage of my life. But I would love to know more about quality of sleep. I don't think people hear that a lot.
So when you talk about having good sleep quality, I mean, I think the way you can imagine it is really how you wake up and what your day looks like is many times a reflection of the kind of sleep you've gotten. Because I'm sure you may have had times when you did sleep 7 hours at night and you wake up and you're still exhausted, right? So you probably didn't have very good quality sleep, or something was going on then. Or you find out that, yes, you were able to sleep well at night and you were able to get up and get about your day, but you start to feel very tired during the day, you're irritable, exhausted. It might be that something's going on with your sleep quality. And so there are many things that can impact our sleep quality. So environmental factors. So are there, is the room too hot? Is there noise? Is there light impacting your sleep because it's kind of waking you up because it's preventing you from getting into deep sleep? So that's environmental. And then we could talk about things like, medical issues, right? Is there sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, eczema, right? Skin issues that making you itchy all night long.
Yeah.
Anything else, reflux, asthma. Are you getting up to pee frequently because maybe you're on certain medications? That's another thing that can disrupt your sleep quality. And then, it could be things like stressful. So is there any anxiety? Are you going through, are you experiencing trauma? Is there something else that's really impacting your mood that could be playing a role in you having a hard time with sleep? And then we also talk about are there habits, right? Things that's usually very common. So are we using a device so late into the night that we're now having just really what we call arousals that's really disrupting us? Or are we drinking caffeine too close to bedtime? And caffeine is a stimulant. So that's going to stay in your system for a while, especially if you have it late. And then that can make you typically just rob you of deep sleep. And so that can cause sleep disruptions. Or things like alcohol. If you drink very close to bedtime, you may fall asleep quickly. Alcohol actually serves as a sedative, right? And so what then happens, though, it is metabolized so quickly by our liver that within, maybe the second half of the night, you may now find out you're having very weird nightmares. You may find out that you're just really having very disrupted sleep. You're waking up frequently and things like that. So we can kind of look at it as, environmental factors, sort of like emotional, mental factors, and then medical factors as well. So quite a number of things can impact that sleep quality.
And you didn't even mention children coming into your room in the middle of the night and wanting to get in bed with you and sleep with you, or pets, right? Pets sleeping with you and taking up all the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's where, and this is what I tell parents who are like, well, hopefully my child will outgrow their sleep issues and they'll be able to sleep in their own bed. But that is, years of your sleep suffering as well. So definitely something that could be a major sleep disruptor.
What about with children? Do they need more sleep? And do we need to be doing things differently for them?
Yeah, great question. So, the 7 to 9 hours of sleep is really for adults. So adults 18 and over. Teenagers usually will recommend about 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Our school-age children, sort of like that 6 to 11-year-old, 12-year-old, usually I'll say they need about 9 to 11 hours of sleep. And then, our preschoolers and things like that need even more. So anywhere from, 10 to 13 hours of sleep. And then newborns, they sleep like majority of the day.
Are they even awake?
I know, maybe for like 6 hours, honestly. And that just really goes to show you how important sleep is. It is so important that during that newborn phase, what's happening? They are growing very rapidly. Their brains are developing, right? That is so critical that they need sleep to be able to effectively achieve those milestones. And one of the things we see when kids don't get enough sleep is their growth, their learning, their growth and development is one of the first things that you see that's affected.
Oh, wow. Now, what about consistency with sleep, right? So what if you're like, oh, I'm going to get by on 5 hours of sleep Monday through Friday, but then I'm going to make up for it Saturday, Sunday. Is that true? Can you make up for it, or is that not a good policy?
Yeah, so this is what I say. Sleep is not like a bank. You can't just plan to bank it and withdraw on the weekend. If you do the math, it's really, really going to be hard for you to catch up. And so what is happening is you're going to just over time continue to accumulate sleep debt. even if you pay a little bit of that sleep debt up on the weekend, you have to realize that if you go back to those same sleep patterns, it's almost like you're experiencing jet lag. And we call that phenomenon social jet lag, where you are maybe short on sleep and you're waking up at 6 a.m. or whatever every day during the week. And then on the weekend, you're like sleeping until noon. It's like you're traveling across so many time zones, and then you're making an attempt to come back on Monday to kind of resume without giving your body time to recover. And so over time, that definitely has a negative impact on our health and our well-being.
So do you recommend waking up around the same time, even on the weekends? Because that kind of blew my mind even a couple years ago. I was like, there is no way I'm waking up early on the weekends. But what I found is now that I'm in a more consistent sleep pattern, I don't need that Saturday, Sunday to sleep late to recover, that I actually wake up, the light. I'm very sensitive to the light. So the light wakes me up and then I'm up and I feel great.
Yes, yes. So the consistency is so key. In fact, when people start to ask, like, what's one thing I could do to help my sleep? I would say consistency is one of the top things. So having a consistent sleep time and wake time. Because what happens is that we all have what we call our circadian rhythm. And so that's kind of like an internal clock that sort of works on its own, and it's aligned with the environmental clock. So it kind of goes about a 24 to a little longer than a 24-hour cycle. So your body automatically knows, like in the morning, the sun is up, I'm meant to be awake. In the evening, the sun is down, I'm meant to be sleeping. So when you don't have a consistent sleep time, it makes it hard for your body to anchor when it's supposed to sort of restart. And so when we talk about a disruption in your circadian rhythm, that's pretty much what that is, because it's like, okay, today it seems like we started the reset at 6 a.m. The other day we started the reset at 12 noon. So it's kind of all over the place. And that circadian rhythm not only controls our sleep wake or regulates our sleep wake cycle, it also has so many other functions in our body, like when our hormones are released, our blood pressure, some other roles, such that it is so, so important to try to keep that as stable and as regular as possible.
Great advice. I say that all the time with skincare. Consistency is key. So maybe it sounds boring, right? It's not sexy, but consistency will get you the results, not just with your skin, but also with your sleep. So great advice there. I would love to know your pearls on how can someone get good sleep? What are your recommendations?
I usually would call it my 5 top tips, and it's an acronym that I created. It's CREATE, Restful Sleep Habits, so CREATE. And I think that's just a good place to start. So C stands for, guess what? Consistency. So
At least you're consistent with your advice.
Exactly. It's really having that consistent sleep time and wake time, including on the weekends. I mean, on the weekends, depending on what your schedule is, right? Like you can't be in for an hour or two. I wouldn't go past 2 though, right? And then the R is a routine. So having a routine, a calming ritual before bed. So skincare, yes, absolutely. A part of your routine before bed. It really helps you kind of de-stress and cue your body that it's time for sleep. And so I think that's really important. And then E is for the environment. So we talked about things that could be sleep disruptors, like excess light or noise, or temperature dysregulation. If the room is too hot, you may have a hard time with sleep. So you want to keep your room cool, you want to keep it dark, and then you want to keep it either quiet or at least being able to mask out any external noises that could disrupt your sleep.
What about this bad boy?
Oh, the phone. Yeah. Because number one, the disruption either for notifications will disrupt, right, from the noise. And then the light, right? So that really ideally should not be part of our sleep environment. If you have to, because a lot of people use their phone for their alarm clock, a lot of people may need their phone, if you're on call or you have family that you need to hear from very quickly. I think what you can do is maybe charge it at the opposite side of the room, so it's not right next to your bed, as a strategy that's practical and works. And then A stands for assigning the bed for sleep and intimacy and not doing other non-sleep related things in bed. So don't go to bed to do your work, finish up your notes, send emails, eat dinner, play video games, watch TV. Really, you should just try to limit every other activity from the bed. And then T is technology. So the phone, whatever the devices are, TV, screen time, I would say at least 30 to 60 minutes before bed, ideally, especially if you're someone who struggles with winding down. And so you can replace that with non-stimulating activities. It's not just the light, right? When it comes to the phone, it's the light, it's content. There's content in there that either will kind of suck you in and take up more of your sleep time. And of course, there's the light piece as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could be reading something and see something that really affects you, like scares you, makes you angry, makes you sad. So yeah, it's the content, I think, too. What is E? What is this final E?
So E is really eliminate. So you have to do that personal audit to figure out what are things that I need to eliminate from my bedtime routine. So things like caffeinated beverages too close to bedtime. It could be alcohol. If you notice that heavy meals, that's also a big one. I usually will say you want to make sure that 2 or 3 hours before bed, that you're done with any heavy, spicy meals, because that can disrupt your sleep. It could be, do you need to eliminate your phone or drama, right? Or arguments, things that can affect your sleep. You really then get to put that in and say, okay, these are things that I'm going to make sure that I'm not getting in my way of good sleep. So that's CREATE, create.
I can definitely remember that. Now, what about for children? Do you kind of recommend the same thing for them as well?
I would say absolutely. I mean, I would reinforce the importance of routines for children. Screen time, probably you want to keep them from screens about an hour before bed. So we want to just really, especially for some of our kids that are super energetic and all that. So you really want to help them to wind down. And then another thing I would say for kids is really about, setting healthy limits, because a lot of kids really struggle with the bedtime resistance where they are pushing back bedtime, multiple curtain calls. And so really it's important to set those limits and things so that they know how to sleep independently.
I think creating that routine, I have a child who struggled a lot with sleep when he was younger, and being able to shut down and just getting him into a routine where he knows every night the plan, what's going to happen. And honestly, for myself as well, I need that routine because I have a hard time shutting my brain down. And I find reading for me is like better than Ambien. It puts me to sleep so well. Can I read on my Kindle? Is that okay? It's the Paperwhite.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes, as long as you don't have the brightness too high, I really would say let's shut down that brightness. Absolutely. But I agree. I think reading is a great thing to incorporate into your routine. And for high achieving women, this is something that I see a lot where their minds are so busy. And so if you don't take that moment, you may be exhausted. And this is what I see. This is the very common scenario I see. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't even have time for a routine. I just crash, right? And that right there is crashing from exhaustion, not necessarily that your body is like conditioned and ready to sleep, like you would sleep anywhere. But if you can take time to even practice like a 10-minute routine, maybe just wash your face, do a little bit of a stretch, practice some gratitude before getting into bed, and just really, be in the moment and intentionally sort of separate your daytime self from your nighttime self. It makes a huge difference in lowering that cortisol level so that you are less likely to sort of wake up in the morning and wake up in the middle of the night with your mind racing. Because now what has happened is you crashed, so you sort of took the edge off, but that cortisol was still riding so high that it woke you up. And whatever thoughts you had before bed, but you were so exhausted to even process it, is now emerging in the middle of the night.
Gosh, well, you also bring up a good point. What do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night, or if you wake up in the middle of the night? What are your tips for getting back to sleep? I bet it's not grabbing your phone, which is what a lot of us do.
Yes, don't look at, I would say, if you could do nothing, do nothing. I think sometimes that need to do something is what creates a lot of the sleep anxiety, because it's like, what do I do? What do I do? Should I do meditation? Should I do that? Right? Like, especially if you know that, first of all, what I recommend is doing almost like a body scan in that sense. Like, do I need to pee? Is there any discomfort? Is there a reason why I woke up? Because sometimes all you may need to do is get up, use the bathroom, and go back to sleep, right? Am I thirsty? Do I need a slight sip of water? Something of that sort, right? Am I hot, right? Is there did I break out into a sweat and so now I'm uncomfortable? Do I need to change, So addressing that is first. If you are starting to be at that point where it's now feeling like it's stressing you out because you're exhausted and your mind is racing and you're frustrated, it's almost like I want you to embrace just being comfortable with being awake, right? And so what does that look like? You may just get out of bed, find somewhere to relax because it's becoming so stressful. So you might as well just like get out of bed and do something that you enjoy, not on your phone. So something relaxing. So maybe bring out a book or do some journaling or something to just kind of calm yourself down. Listen to some meditation or a podcast. And then over time, you'll find out that that feeling of frustration is diminishing, and then you start to feel sleepy again, then you could get back into bed.
Dr. Brown, I would love to know, are there any supplements that can help with sleep or melatonin? You recommend stuff like this or no?
Great question. So I usually will say, what's the goal? So if you have insomnia or you have an underlying sleep problem, you really can't supplement your way into good sleep. So I want people to understand that from the back. So you want to figure out, is there an underlying sleep issue? So if you have insomnia, meaning that you've been having difficulties falling asleep or staying asleep, and it's been more than 3 months, you probably want to see somebody about that because supplements are not likely to be the fix. But if you're someone who's like, you know what, I want to augment what is already good. So I already have healthy sleep practices, but I want to just make sure I'm doing more, in terms of helping myself sleep better. I have some supplements. So magnesium is one I like, especially for people who tend to feel a lot of stress. Maybe you have aches and pains. Maybe you have restless legs. Sometimes magnesium supplementation is good. You can actually do that with Epsom salt. It contains magnesium, right? So you can, there are ways you can do this. And many times we are deficient in magnesium because it's in the soil, but many times where our plants are grown, they're magnesium deficient. So that's something that you could try. Another thing is vitamin D, which you could get by spending time outside, right? You could get it naturally.
No.
How dare I say that? I'm not talking about when the sun is glaring and hot, like in the morning, right? Natural, just a little bit, of course, appropriately making sure that, sunscreen is on and things like that. That's actually something that we do recommend in a way that's safe, right? Because, of course, you don't want to expose yourself and then, risk other issues.
I definitely am a big fan of vitamin D supplementation for sure.
Yeah, perfect. And so vitamin D supplementation is good because what we noticed about vitamin D is that, it does so many good things.
Yeah.
But also what we found is that there are probably along the pathway of the production of melatonin, there is something in, but it's not very clear how that role is. But vitamin D does help in that path. And then, things, when you start to get into, some people will use things like lavender, chamomile, those things, it's a hit or miss. Some people use it more as a routine to kind of help them wind down because it does help with people who may feel a bit more anxious and stressed. It kind of helps you relax. And if you're relaxed enough, hopefully sleep will come. So those are some. There's some other supplements, not as common, like L-theanine, GABA, and things like that. I would say establish really healthy sleep practices. Eat a very robust and well-balanced diet. Limit caffeine and some of the other sleep disruptors. If you need to do some supplements here and there, it's fine, but it's not needed most times.
Wow, so great. I cannot wait to go to sleep tonight after our discussion. But this was a lot of fun, Dr. Brown, and I learned so much, and I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, skin friend, I messed up, and I totally forgot to let Dr. Brown share where people can follow her and what she is up to. So let me be the one to share all this with you. So Dr. Brown can be found in her clinical practice, The Restful Sleep Place, and she also is active on social media at Restful Sleep MD, as well as LinkedIn, Dr. Funke Brown. And I will be sure to include that all in the show notes so you can follow her and get great sleep guidance for yourself and your family. All right, we'll see everyone next week.